today's just going to be kind of all about toning. We're not going to talk about products for liftability so much, but we are going to talk about the tools that you guys have at your disposal for toning and some fun kind of flex things that you can do with the ASP range for toning. Okay. So we'll kind of get right into it. You know, why do we tone? What is the power of toning? And really you can see by this image, which I think Amanda, you sent this to me. This was like a behind the chair image. Maybe that got posted on social media, but I thought this was just, okay. Yeah. It was just so great to be able to see what it can actually do. So, that is a good image you may be familiar with seeing, but it really is going to go in and kind of enhance and refine whatever you've lifted to. Okay. Why we do it, there's several different reasons. It really helps to provide your desired tonal result. In not all situations are we lucky enough to be able to lift and get those beautiful tones that we're looking for. So of course we have to go in and tweak some things. So that's why we're doing it. It also really kind of helps to normalize the pH again after raw lifts. It's definitely assisting with the porosity following the lightener. Okay. Of course, refresh and neutralize between services. I'm sure you guys do the same. Some of my blondes come in between their service, get just a toner on, and it really looks like they got a full color done again. It's absolutely a great way to kind of bump things up. Again, it's going to provide shine and suppleness to the hair as well, which is awesome. And again, brilliant balance. So it's going to be able to provide, you can see just in this wet image to the left, the kind of balance that it creates. It's not so harsh between the two ideas. And it really kind of goes in and like filters the color a bit. So that's like the power of toning, why we do it. And we're going to go a lot more into that as well today. So number one, here's our best friend, the color wheel. Okay. This needs to be your BFFL, your best friend for life. Okay. You need to know your color wheel. And when you know your color wheel, you can know and anticipate what your results are going to be. I know we talk a lot about during the lifting process where people don't want to tone until they rinse the color out. And that a lot of times with converter, people find that to be challenging. But at the end of the day, guys, when you open up a foil and you've watched it process, say we're at yellow, there's no doubt we know exactly where it's going to go from there. Nothing wonky is going to happen. It's not going to revert to red. It's not going to revert to, you know, orange or anything. It's only going to get more pastelized out. And knowing what it's going to do during the lifting process is very similar to knowing what you need to do in the neutralizing process. The rules are always going to hold steady and fast. They're never going to change. The things that neutralize each other are never in some situations. It's in all situations. It's the law of color. If you are not super familiar with your color wheel, I always joke that the forearm is an excellent place for a tattoo. Make it fun, make it feminine, do whatever you need to do, but it needs to be somewhere where you can easily access it. You have it up in your back room, again, as a tattoo, keep your tech book open, anything, you just have to know it. With our new tech manual that we put out this year, we also now have placed our colors on the color wheel so that you can see exactly where they live. So just to help you read this color wheel in case you're not familiar with it, if you go all the way to the center of the color wheel, you're going to see, for example, the 2.2 that's really close to the center, that's in that violet range. The closer the color gets to the center, the more depth that it has. Okay, so a 2.2 is telling that there's a lot of depth in that color because it's a level 2, so there's a lot of violet saturation. As it works its way out the color wheel, you'll see it gets to a 4, a 6, an 8, a 9, and a 10, and that just means that it's pastelizing that violet tone out. So there's going to be less pigment at those higher levels, but they will still be violet based. So again, make sure that you know that color wheel and you'll be able to anticipate any result and deal with any toning crisis as you need to, as long as you're familiar with that. We're going to bring it back to kind of kicking it old school. Okay. On the left, of course, you see another version of the color wheel and you'll see the arrows that go across. So if we're looking at red, you follow that arrow all the way across and we're going to neutralize with green. Okay, that's going to be the only thing that's going to neutralize red on the color wheel. Blue's not going to do it. Yellow's not going to do it. So always go completely across. Of course, orange is going to be neutralized by blue and yellow will be neutralized by violet. The image that you have to the right is the natural remaining pigment chart. Okay, I'm going to call it the NRP chart throughout the rest of the presentation, so you guys are familiar with that term. We're referring back to this. So with this shows you in the first column what the level of the hair is, and the second column is going to show you what exposed pigment you're seeing during the lifting process. So for example, this is relative to the color wheel in that we're going to see a level 5 is primarily going to be red balanced, okay? We have a 7 is going to live where orange is, and a 9 is going to live where yellow lives. So these are the 3 tones that you really, really need to be familiar with and how we neutralize them across, okay? All right. Converter is going to be the thing that we mostly tone with. So Infinity, the permanent hair color range is all permanent, but when you mix it with converter, what converter is going to do is block the ammonia content and transfer that permanent color into a tone on tone demi, which is how we're going to tone mostly using affinage. Okay, so that's what that product does. The mixing and processing is going to be at a 1:2 mix ratio. That's going to be able to provide you your swatch results. Okay, you won't ever use heat with converter, you won't cap it, and you don't want to apply it with the bottle. What's going to happen is as the developer mixes with the color, we're going to start to block that ammonia content. So in that event, we don't want to use heat because it would blow a lot of that smell of ammonia back into the face. We want to make sure that that ammonia continues to escape. So we don't want to cap it for any reason. We want to let it be open air. Same thing with the bottle. If we go ahead and put converter into a bottle, there's no room for that ammonia content to kind of do its thing. We want to make sure we can get some air to it. So we're always going to apply our toners with bowl and brush. Okay. Porous hair or tinted or permed hair would be 10 to 15 minutes of processing. Very porous hair, which would be like bleached immediately after, 3 to 15 minutes, or visual processing. Okay, so our toners you very much can keep an eye on, and once you see the result that you're looking for, you can go ahead and rinse off. We'll talk about longevity within that as well in a few minutes. That's just about basically how to use converter. You're going to see these highlighted regions down here. This is the stuff that's super, super important. So if you're working on levels 5 and below, you really want to make sure that you're mixing that product and allow it to sit for 5 minutes prior to application. If you're mixing levels 6 and above, you want to make sure that you're mixing it and allowing it to sit for 10 minutes prior to application. The reason for that is that the ammonia content is higher at those levels 6 and above. So the converter is going to need a little bit longer to work to be able to remove that ammonia content. Levels 5 and below, the ammonia content is a little bit less. It doesn't need as much time. Okay. The reason for the sitting is ensuring that you don't lift the natural base. If you were to just pick up converter, mix it and put it on the head without a sit time, you will shift natural base because that ammonia would have not yet dissipated or escaped or been blocked. So therefore it will still have liftability to it. Okay. We'll talk about when and why you wouldn't want that result. I think it's in the next slide, but that's just the basic nitty gritty on how to use converter and what that product actually does. Does anybody have any questions on just that so far?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, cool. Good, good, good. All right. So what we're going to see as we go through some of these slides is you guys are going to see the top will be called toning troubles. And these will be some common issues that we see with toning. So the common question that we get a lot with toning is, can I tone with 10 volume instead of converter? We do get this quite frequently, and we're going to talk about the benefits, the pros and the cons of using converter instead of that. Okay. So my question is, whenever someone asks me this question, is I always frequently like to pose a question with a question, because what I really want at the end of the day is people to start asking more questions about why we do the things that we do. So my question is always, why would you want to lift with 10 volume? Or why would you want to tone with 10 volume? Oftentimes the results that I get, the answers that I get is they're wanting a little bit of lift, or they're looking for a more permanent result. Okay. And the next slide will explain the pros and cons of that, but I wanted to first share with you formulas, which you guys will see randomly, formulas and images pop up so that you guys can be inspired by that as well. So yeah, the next slide will be more about toning troubles and how we choose 10 volume versus converter, but I wanted to just share with you guys this image along with her toning. So you can just go ahead, take a snapshot of that if you want to, and we can revisit that as well later if you'd like. Okay, so the toning troubles, common question, can I tone with 10 volume? What we need to understand about why we would or would not do this is you have to understand that Infinity with our permanent range mixed with 10 volume is going to have a really unique way in which it develops. So the first 30 minutes of room temp processing when you're using 10 volume with any of our color is going to be lift action. So those first 30 minutes we're going in and we're removing natural pigment and making room for the pigment that we actually want to deposit. So when we're room temp processing, this happens for 30 minutes. Only the last 15 minutes do we get color deposit. If you're using this with gentle heat, The first 15 minutes is going to be lift action, again, cleaning out natural pigment. And the last 10 minutes is going to be deposit. So when people want to tone with 10 volume, the only benefit to doing this is if you actually allow the 10 volume to process the full processing time. Because if I'm mixing 10 volume at the bowl with, say, my 9.0 and 9.2, and I'm watching it, what's going to happen is the first, in this case, 30 minutes that it's on, it's just lifting. So what's it doing? It's exposing a lot of natural warmth, and you're not getting a ton of tonal deposit happening at all because it's saving its deposit for the last portion of processing. Okay, so lots of lift, not a lot of tonal control, which can definitely lead to people feeling like they get a really warm base when they use 10 volume as an option without a lot of control again. So the benefit to using converter is that we're going to go in and completely skip the lift action portion of the process. We don't need to lift because it's going to be a tone on tone color. So all we're actually going to do is the deposit. So again, the benefit of using 10 volume would be great if you could allow it process the full processing time. Converter is going to work a heck of a lot faster since we're just depositing. So my choice would be to go ahead and use converter instead, because I can cut that process time in half and not expose a ton of unnatural warmth. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on toning with 10 volume versus converter? We do get that question a lot. Nothing so far?
There's nothing in the chat.
Cool.
If anyone has any questions.
Do you want to add anything to that, Amanda?
Nope. I think this is something that's super important. You know, a lot of times when, you know, we're looking for that extra liftability of when we would reach for a 10 volume, chances are you're not light enough to start with. So I think the biggest thing is really just lifting to getting to that tonality where, or that level that you're needing to tone at, and going in and using converter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the reason I say that too is, again, I always ask, why do you want to use 10 volume for toning? You know, and allow them to kind of think about it, think it through. We associate it with it being a permanent result, but at the end game, the whole point of using 10 volume, 20 volume, 30, 40 is to remove natural pigment and then decorate with what you want. Guys, we already removed the natural pigment through pre-lightning. Okay.
And really with using converter, you can get a very long lasting, not necessarily permanent, but a very long lasting feel to where you don't get that with other brands. So I understand, you know, coming from another brand, then using converter of thinking, you know, it's going to wash out very quickly. And like Heather said, to talk about longevity with that, but you're really getting that longevity with converter.
Exactly. And I think understanding too, the difference between, you know, a 10 volume developer and a product like converter is anytime you're using a permanent hair color brand, what makes it permanent is the fact that it has ammonia or it has some kind of ammonia derivative. And the point of that is to go in and remove natural pigment. So there isn't a need for that afterwards. For toning, that job has already been done. So again, you're taking out a step that's completely unnecessary, but understanding the real difference between the two. If I'm using converter, the only difference is I have no ammonia content, which means that I'm not removing any pigment, but I'm still depositing pigment the same way that 10 volume would. So at the end of the day, it's not that it's a semi-permanent. It's not that it's just going to leach out of the hair. It's just skipping the natural removal process, but it's still in all can make it permanent. So that's that. All right. So let's talk about what happens if I don't allow converter the sit time or the downtime. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm getting like lift at the root, or I'm getting a base break, or whatever it might be. I actually love the fact that we have a lot of flexibility with converter. I can let it process I can let it sit its full sit time before using it, and I really won't get a ton of a base shift. On super fine hair types, possibly, but that's going to be the case with any kind of super fine hair type. Okay. But I actually really use this to my benefit quite a bit. So if I don't allow the sit time with converter, what's going to happen is I am going to get a natural shift at the base. Okay. So I'm going to use this to my benefit. So for example, you're going to see this image here. This is my girl, Jordan. She's my beautiful blonde. She's stunning anyway. She's a great head of hair to work on. You're going to see the image to the left is Jordan with a base break. So she comes in about every 12 weeks and we foil her hair, but every 6 weeks in between she comes in for a toner and a base break. This allows us to keep her hair feeling really healthy and losing the risk of overlapping onto blonde with lightener, but again, making her feel really fresh. So the image to the left is actually her 6-week grow out, okay, with a base break. Okay. You'll see here in the image to the right where she has no base break, this is her natural that's growing in. So you can see there's quite a significant difference between what her natural is and what the base break was able to provide. Okay, and this is my favorite base break formula. I use this on Jordan. I use this on a ton of my other guests as well. We'll talk about that formula just in 1 second. But just going back, there are some situations in which people really don't want any kind of base break. So there's some things that you can do. The number one thing is making sure that you're allowing for sit time, okay? Don't mix up your toner formula once you have them in the bowl. When you know they've got about 5 to 10 minutes left of processing, go mix your toner then. That way, once you bring them back, you pull out the foils, you shampoo them. That downtime has happened, but you're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting. It's already done for you. In rare situations in which I have someone who has extremely, extremely fine hair, say it's a regular client of mine, we're just doing a partial, I know what we're going to tone with, I will actually mix her toner when I mix the lightener and let that toner sit throughout the whole entire process. Just whipping it up kind of a couple times as I go through, making sure that really all that ammonia content has been blocked so that I'm ensuring that once I actually do apply that process, there's going to be no liftability at all. I don't often have to do that. I actually love a base break for all of my blondes. So that's the reason I actually choose to do it. I feel like it gives a really nice, natural, buffed out result. Okay. There's also another extra measure tip that you could do to stop any kind of base lifting on converter if you feel that you're getting it. What you would actually do is take your color, say you're using a 10.0 and a 10.2. Go ahead and put that in the bowl. Don't put any developer in yet. So no converter yet, just put those two colors in. Even if you're using one color, put it in, take your brush and actually like mix it up with no developer in it. You're really going to be able to smell that ammonia kind of kickback. The ammonia is found in the color. Okay, it's not found in your developer. So when you're going and aerating out that color first, you're allowing for a really decent amount of that ammonia to be escaping before you even add in the converter. So the converter going in after you've whipped that up is just kind of finishing the process. So that's a really great benefit as to stopping any kind of base lift should you need it to. I have switched over my couple of girls that I do get a lift with no matter what and doing that tip, and I'm not getting any shift anymore, which is amazing. Okay. The way that I'm doing my base break too with Jordan's formula, which you guys see here, is I'm actually mixing her and only allowing that color to sit for 5 minutes before I apply. So in this case, because it's technically at level 10, I should be letting it sit the full 10 minutes prior to application. But I'm choosing to use the 5 minutes of liftability that are still in that product and use it for my base break. So what I actually do is I mix up this formula and then I go ahead and apply it at her root area right at the bowl. I let that sit about for 5 minutes and then I pull it through her ends and she sits another about 5 to 10 minutes after that. So that way I'm able to get a base break and I'm toning her all in one service. It doesn't have to be anything that's separate, which is awesome. So her formula, I'm just going to kind of walk you through that a little bit. I do about 10.0. Sometimes I'm doing a third of the formula. Sometimes I'm doing the half of the formula. It really depends on what Jordan's doing, whether she's doing really, really icy blonde or whether she's using a more natural kind of golden blonde or a very neutral blonde like you see in this after picture to the left. So in this particular picture, I did a half of her formula 10.0. The other half of her, the quarter of the formula would then be 10.21, which is a blue base. And then I'm using a quarter of the formula 12OS, which is part of our high lift series. It's a high lift booster. But what's really nice about using a 12OS with your 10 level toners is it actually kind of goes in and pastelizes or dilutes a little bit of the tonality. So the deposit on it actually appears a bit lighter. But what's nice about using 12OS for base breaking is, again, it's going to increase that liftability a little bit more. So I'm going to get a little bit more of a shift at that base. And again, as you can see from her, that arrow that's on her face now pointing at her hair prior to base break, you can really see that it was able to get quite a bit of lift with a lot of tonal control at that root area. Okay.
Is this something that we had a question come through? Are you doing a base break on dry or damp hair?
I'm doing it on damp hair. Yep, absolutely. So it allows it to work a tad bit slower for me. Doing it on dry hair, you would get a lot more liftability a lot quicker. And I find that particularly because I'm pulling it through her ends and toning it, if her hair is dry, I have not equaled the porosity. So you can get kind of spotty deposit. So going and doing it on pre-shampooed and just towel dried hair evens out the porosity, allows me the time to get it totally on there and spread it through with a lot more ease. So it's a nice fast service.
Perfect. And then at the base break, are you pulling that roots to ends, or is that just something that you're using on the base break?
No, so I'm starting right at her root area first. I'm going and applying that, and then I let that sit about 5 minutes. And then after that, once the base break looks like it's doing its job really well, I'll then pull the remainder of it through her end so that she can also have a toner at the same time, because she's going to need that between those 12 weeks of service anyway. Okay. So we were doing on Jordan, we were highlighting her like every 6 weeks. And I was just like, girl, it is hard to not overlap. So I had convinced her, she had never had base breaks done before. So I was like, listen, what if we bumped you to every 6 weeks or every 5 weeks, depending on time of year? You come in, we do a base break, and then that way we're only foiling your hair every 10 weeks. And I can make sure I'm not overlapping. I have a lot more flexibility. I feel like she was getting a cleaner, more even lift, wasn't having to worry about shoddy deposits because of porosity issues. And she's never looked back. So for her, she feels like she's here actually less because she's stretching it 2 weeks on both sides of the service, and she feels like she's spending less because she's not doing a big foil every single time. Cool. Any other questions, Amanda?
We just had a question of when you would mix up the color before adding converter, and I just put it in the chat for you, Shauna. You're going to mix that up when you don't want to have any shift to the natural base, especially on that finer hair. If you're just looking for no shift to that natural base, that's when you would mix up that color and then add your converter and let it sit for that 5-10 minutes.
Perfect. Yeah, hair types, like, I mean, you can tell my hair, I do not have fine hair. Amanda does not have fine hair, okay? We can totally just do this at time. We don't have to pre-mix it and then do the converter. For hair types like ours, it's for that really fine hair type that you might want to mix the color first and then add the converter in afterwards. You can certainly do it either time. It's just, I find that personally on the more finer textures, I take that extra measure step, whereas typically I don't need to. So really just judge it based on the hair texture that you're working on. Okay, any other questions on base breaks?
How do you know what color you want to use for a base break?
Perfect. So with Jordan, she's a 7. Okay. Her natural is a really beautiful 7. So I choose to go in with a 10.21, which is blue based. So as I'm having that base break happen and I'm lifting and I'm working through the level 7 pigment, I'm actually using blue to counteract that through that process. If Jordan was more of a natural 8 or a natural 9, I would go to using a 10.2 instead, which is just violet based. Otherwise, if I'm using a 10.21 on that, I may get too much cool kickback because that ashy tone is too dense. So it really depends on where you're starting. I typically always use a 10.21 or a 10.2. I'm never really using a 10.1 for a base break at all. Once you get into like level 6, level 5, you're never going to end up at matching their ends with that anyway. I would instead go in and do color for that between surfaces. Okay, feeling good?
Perfect.
Cool. Satin. I know that Amanda loves satin so very much. So I'm sure she's going to share some good tips too. But satin is our true demi line. This is a true demi out the gate, where converter is converting our permanent into a demi, which means that there was ammonia content and we have to do its job to remove that ammonia content. Whereas with satin, it never contained ammonia in the first place. So there's no sit time, there's no removal time or blocking time. You can literally mix this up with the satin activating cream and go ahead and apply it right now with insurance that you will get 0 liftability at the root, 0 base breaking at all. There are some people that love this benefit, and I know that I really do use this on my guests who are of finer texture and I want to ensure no kind of base lift. I'm going to go this route. So this is another great toning option. Again, true demi color. This is going to come with 20 intermixable shades. You'll see the 20 shades here. Again, customize them, mix them together. They're all formulated with Datum Plus technology. It has a conditioning cream emulsion base of shea butter and argan oil. Guys, there is no shine like the satin shine, right, Amanda? Like converter's beautiful, beautiful shine. Satin shine, it's next level.
It's glossy. It's like glass. It's so reflective. It's so beautiful.
It's like creating a shine line from root to end. It's just mirror finish. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay. So this can also be a really great choice to use. This is also really beautiful to use for low lighting as well. Okay. It's great for that. This is awesome for root smudging. My go-to root smudging is like the 6.0, the 7.0. It's just simple. It's easy. It's beautiful. It just moves straight to deposit, no lift action at all. The clear, the 0.000, is the most unbelievable thing to help with static. Okay, in New England, where I am, our winters are very, very, very dry. And all it takes is one move with that comb through dry hair, and we are puffing out like crazy with static. So in those winter months, I definitely am doing clear shine treatments on any of my virgin haired clients to help with that for sure. It's a great, great tool to have.
Yeah, and for that static too, for even going through and just highlighting someone and using it as that in-between color roots to ends, I mean, it really takes their color up to the next level without having to add any sort of deposit of color. Like you're literally just adding in pure shine. And you know, because of that, you can add on for a double service, right? Like it just takes
Totally.
that color and that ticket price into the next level.
Yeah. And they'll notice the texture of the hair is different, right? It
It's worth
really
it.
feels like the cuticle is like all laid down and everything's happy and like the finishing is good. The styling for them is better. And I always explain it to guests like it's like a top coat for your nail polish, right?
Yeah.
Like your nail polish color is pretty, but you put a top coat on it and now we've got some high gloss finish, and they just understand that really well. And I don't think many women who wear nail polish don't see the value of a top coat. So they're going to see it in their hair as well.
I love that analogy.
Well, any other questions on this particular slide, Amanda? Everything good? Okay, I'm keeping an eye on that little red dot with the numbers, making sure everything's good. All right, so satin, this is going to be super easy to use, guys. The mixed ratio is 1 part your color, 2 parts of your satin activating cream. This has its own developer, okay? Your processing when we're talking about highlighting, which is the only, or toning, which is the only way I'm going to talk about satin right now, because there is different process time if you're doing it as a root color for gray coverage, whatever. We're just talking toning right now. So the toning time is visual processing. So you're literally going to get that color on, watch it do its thing. Once you've gotten to a place you really love, you go ahead and just shampoo that out. So this is just another formula example for you. This is Kaylee. We did some satin toning through her mids with 8.31 and then just brought a 9.23 with a quarter of clear through her ends so that she could just get a little bit more pastelized as she got towards the ends of her hair. So that's some finished results with satin. Amanda, is there anything else you want to add to satin? Because I know you're a satin lover.
I am a satin lover. You know, I love satin. People always say, well, when would I use satin over converter with Infinity? And it's just going to be a different visual as an end result, right? Like a 7.3 in satin is going to look different than a 7.3 in Infinity with converter. And in satin is just really going to be a lot cooler since you're not using any liftability. You're not blocking any of that liftability like you would be with Infinity with a permanent color and converter. It's straight away a lot cooler. So that's when I tend to reach for satin a little bit more, when I want more of those cooler tones, when I want more of that like depth and that deposit, is kind of tending to when I reach for satin. I love satin too for those really pastelized looks, like, and I know you'll talk about it, but just like you did here through your ends, mixing a 923 with 000. I mean, it just gives you a really beautiful iridescent-y, softer look, which is great for pull-throughs or great for low lighting on your blondes where they want a little bit of deposit, but not overkill.
Yep, absolutely. It's so, so, so creamy to work with too. The viscosity of it is just beautiful. It really does even go through the hair like satin. And the thing of too, like we're going to talk about this in the next slide, is that people are always like, oh, it's only 20 shades. Like, you know, what a bummer. I wish you guys had more. And here's what we'll talk about that. Is it really just 20 shades? Absolutely not. Okay. Think again, guys. Satin, I want you guys to think of is it's just like a recipe starter. Okay. You can go into the stores and buy those little pouches with like the sauce in it. And then in order to make the meal, you need to actually buy the produce and buy the meat and add it in. And now you have a full dish. So that's what I want you to think about for satin. Satin is just like the recipe starter. You can take your 6.0 as your little packet of sauce. And then you go in and you add in your clear shine. And now you're starting to build a new color. Okay. And then you can actually go in and add in your intensives. And now you're making a full new color in its own right. So it's just kind of a base, nice, small, compact 20 shade line that with your creativity and using the ultimate super shade of clear, you now have so many options and so many different color varieties to you. So why you reach for satin too, I know Amanda had said why she likes to. I think there's just different kind of stylists. Some stylists just want to be able to pull a 10.2 or a 9.2 out of that infinity box, slap it in with some converter, and it's going to do beautiful, beautiful things. Absolutely. But then you're also going to have other colorists who never colored that way. Maybe they were trained with a different color line where they started with the base and you kind of had to custom blend and create in order to make color. If you were trained that way, this is going to feel a lot more like home to you. Right? We all come from different color houses before we find ASP. So having options in how we're creating something like a demi-permanent is really important too. I do love Satin because I love to be ultra creative and create my own bases. In other salons I've worked in, people just don't feel as comfortable doing that. So it's really preference based as well. So know that when you're using satin in any of those 20 shades, if you go ahead and you mix in clear, you'll see the examples below. If I do 3/4 of my, if I just do, let's say a 465 straight, I'm going to get a 465. Okay. If I go and I put 1/4 of my formula clear in it, now it's going to look like a 565. If I do half of my formula clear, it's going to look like a 665. If I do 3/4 of my formula clear, it's going to look like a 765. So now I've just taken 1 tube, which is a 465, add in that clear, and I've just created 4 shades out of that 1 tube of color. So there's a ton of diversity here in terms of how many different color palettes you can create with this. And then of course, adding in your intensives can make anything super custom. So if we go back to the swatch chart here, and we have a color like an 8.0, and you're trying to make something that's blue based, you can go ahead in and, you know, go ahead and add in your 0.7 intensives. Now you've just made an 8.7, okay? Or you want to make a 7.7, you can do the same with the 7.0 and your 0.7 intensives. You want to take the 5.4 and make it more of a ruby color and add in some, you know, red intensive, go ahead and do that. You just created a 5.46. So there's a lot of different ways to play with this. You can cool down colors, you can brighten or lighten up colors as well. This is just a really great option for you, okay? Any questions on that?
Nothing, just
feeling good.
They're saying that they're going to be ordering it to add it to the list this week.
Good. Satin is awesome, guys. Don't be afraid of it at all. It's just get a bunch of swatches. We'll talk about that a lot later. Don't you worry. Get a bunch of swatches, get creative, see that nothing's bad's going to happen. It's just hair color, right? Anything can be changed in 15 minutes flat. So don't be afraid to try a new line like this. It's amazing. Okay. All right. So we're doing good on questions. We can keep trucking. All right. So now we're going to talk about another toning trouble, which is not having a lot of longevity with the toners. And we can fix it with things like a longer processing time. The number one things that lead to short-lived results are things like panic rinsing, right? Panic toning and panic processing. Panic rinsing, when you're sitting at that bowl and you're doing your thing and you're like, oh my God, it's turning violet or it's turning blue, or you're starting to panic. At times you need to trust that process and let the full development happen. And other times it's turning those colors for other reasons, which we'll talk about in about the next slide. Panic toning is when you're sitting in the back room, maybe you're rushed on time and you're just pulling something and you're not thinking about what you're doing, okay? And then of course, panic processing as well, which means that you're not leaving that product on long enough to do all of its neutralizing or its enhancing, and you're getting left with a really kind of shoddy, cut short end result. Okay. Other things that affect longevity of your toners, which we'll go more in depth into these later, it's protein additive. Okay. This is a great addition. It's like 1 pump per 50 milliliters of color or toner. And this will go in and help to equalize the porosity of your product. It's going to help with protein a little bit too. And it's just going to ensure that you're getting a really nice, fully deposited tone into that hair by making sure that the porosity of that whole entire hair strand is in good shape. Okay, Vitaplex is the same. Another great opportunity to put that into your toners to help with longevity. That would be Vitaplex step 1 in the toner and then finishing with a step 2 after. Okay. All right, so more bringing in that base, processing for longer is going to help. When we talk about tonal processing, visual processing for toning, you have to understand too, there's such thing as visually things moving too quickly and then affecting your longevity. So at the bottom portion of the slide, you're going to see this is the actual suggested development times for converter. If we're talking about hair that's very porous or chemically treated, bleached, in this case, you know, after any kind of lightening service or immediately after perming, we're saying it's 3 to 15 minutes of visual development. Okay. Yes, you can see results in as soon as 2 or 3 minutes. Does that mean that you've gotten full deposit and you're using as much of that color as you can? Probably not. So the longer you can leave it on, the better, more longer lasting result that you'll have. And we'll talk about kind of reasons why people pull it too quickly. Things like they're getting overtoning happening, they're seeing blue in the hair, they're seeing violet, anything like that. So we're going to help you with that in order to leave your toners to sit a little bit longer, which is good. Your infinity toners, those are the ones that are in the purple box. We'll talk about those later. That time is going to be up to 25 minutes. If you can let it go up to 25 minutes, you're going to have so much more longevity in those toners. If you're just starting to see the toner start to do action in the hair, guess what, guys? You're going to see it leave just that quickly too. So it's really important that you get a good amount of time on the hair to let it process as much as you possibly can. And the metallics, the development time, we will absolutely talk about this later. Don't even worry about it. 25 to 45 minutes. Okay. Do we have any questions on this one so far as processing time?
Nope. Okay.
Good. Okay. So if you think about it, if you're not fully processing, then you're just staining the hair, right? For instance, let's talk about it in terms of gray coverage. I've got a guest who's 100% white. I come in, put 6.0 on her 100% white, and instead of letting it sit for 45 minutes, what am I doing? I'm letting it sit maybe 10, 15 minutes. What am I going to get? I'm going to get a super, super translucent hollow finish on the hair, like a sheer coverage. And that's about it. And it's not really going to give her any kind of longevity. It's the same thing with pre-lichened hair. Okay. If you're not letting it stay on enough, we're staining that outside cuticle layer and there's not enough time for that color to go into the cortex and do its job. So what happens is you end up with a stain, and we all know that every time you wash the hair on a product that's like a stain, it fades. So they may only end up lasting, 2 or 3 shampoos before she's calling you back saying she's super brassy. Okay. So the longer you leave it on, the better for sure. Anything you want to add to that, Amanda?
Nope.
Cool. Good, good. Here's again the back of Jordan's head. That was the front. The other ones you saw, this is the back. She's my most fun blonde girl, tries new stuff all the time. This is her icy toner that we do a lot in the winter. Again, we're bringing in the 12OS, 30 grams, which is about half the formula. And then I'm doing 12.21, which is blue based with a 30 grams. And I'm actually just tossing in 1 gram of 1.0 just to kind of give it that nice kind of unique finish to the hair. It's just visually kind of fun. We switch it up, like I said, all the time, which is awesome. So in this case with the 12OS and the 12.21, I'm actually using the 12OS as a diluting agent so that the 10.21 isn't so rich in blue pigment. So it's just, again, giving me a more pastelized result. Okay. All right, so let's talk more about bringing in that base. The toning troubles that we have with not allowing us a full processing time, like we talked about in the last slide, is that the toners turn too quickly. Okay, I will tell you guys, our toners do not joke around. Our toners don't, our level 10s, our level 9s, if you're using it with converter, they are all very pigment rich and pigment heavy, which is amazing because it allows you so many opportunities. But when we do have the problem of toners turning too quickly, it means we can't have longevity in process. So what we want to do instead is bring in some base. Okay. When we bring some base in, it allows the deposit to happen a little bit slower so that we can really let that process time work its full length. So we can leave it on as long as possible. So we get really long lasting results as well. So in these 2 images that are off to the left, just wanted to notate, this is not ASP work. Okay. But what I took these images from is just a quick and easy Google image search, but you guys can see exactly what happened in both of these. Okay. On the top image, it looks as though we've just got toner definitely over pigmenting that hair, leaving behind in some areas a really kind of green hue. And then in other areas kind of like a light pastelized blue violet hue. Okay. I don't think this was the anticipated end result. I think this was an absolute issue of overtoning. Okay. Same thing. So those really overtoned areas. And then same thing with this bottom image as well. You can see that money piece where she's probably more fine and delicate took the toner with a lot more pigment in it than other areas. And it left a really kind of slightly violet stain in that particular area. Okay. So what happens when we're overtoning, why it happens is you have something like a level 10, right? And then we're taking a color like 10.21, which is blue based. If I just put that onto that level 10, there's not enough warm pigment at that level 10 in order to absorb and work with that blue base pigment. So what happens is the blue actually takes over and stains the hair. Whereas if I was neutralizing appropriately with the right pigment, it would be able to work with what I'm putting it on and bring it to a nice neutral place. In this particular image on the first, it seems as though that it overtoned because we weren't using the correct neutralizing agent, or there wasn't enough base in there. Okay. So what happens is if you look at these bottom two bubbles to the left of the X, we've got like just an idea of what we would lift to in this kind of pale yellow bubble. And then the image that we have to, the bubble that we have to the right of that is a really pigment rich saturated pigment. So when I put that over and they overlap onto each other, you guys can see that it actually still creates a really, really purple area, which would be an overtone example. If I move over to the right image where it says balance and neutralize, I have that same yellow sphere, that really pastelized yellow. But then I now have added base into this example, and it's kind of sheared out or created more of a translucent, less deposited, diluted pigment with the violet. So that way when they overlap, you can see that I actually neutralized, or I'm not seeing a purple shade. Okay, so bringing in the base would really allow you to dilute out the pigment of what you're adding it to so that you can match the opacity to what you're putting it on. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, put something in the chat. Amanda will stop me. Okay. So these are really good examples of that. So again, these are toners turning too quickly. What you guys are going to see is in all three of these images, the swatch that's off to the left, that really, really blonde swatch, that's just my control swatch. Okay. There's been nothing put on this. The middle swatch for each of the outside swatch of each of these is going to be a color that's straight mixed with no base. So in the first example, you're going to see 10.1. This is what 10.1 looks like with no base added into it, put on the control swatch. Okay, the middle swatch of each one of these is going to be what that toner would look like if the base was added to it. So for example, in the first one, we can see that if I had a 10.1, put it on level 10 hair, I'm going to see a lot of that kind of greenish kind of hue come into the swatch because there's nothing to neutralize, and the tone just overtakes. But then in the middle swatch, I've gone ahead and I've mixed in half of 10.0 as a base, and you can see I've gotten to this really, really beautiful balanced level 10. Okay, same thing with that middle one. We've got, I did a third of 10.0 and 2/3 of 10.21. Okay, so you can see again that in that middle one, I'm definitely getting more of a kind of blue violet undertone with that swatch all the way to the right, but it's balanced beautifully when added with the base. And same thing with the image all the way to the right. 10.2 straight, totally lavender lilac, mix it with the base and it's not anymore. So I hope that that visual helps. I dictate how much base I put in based on a lot of things. The client's hair texture like mine or texture like Amanda can handle a little bit more straight without having to add a base because our hairs, the fabric of it is, can just handle it. Really fine bases are going to grab that really quickly. So in those situations, I might need to add like half of my formula a base. But on hair types like with mine, I can probably do a third of the formula a base and then 2/3 whatever additive I want into it. And because that hair type is what it is, it's not going to pull in those ash tones as aggressively. Okay. Any questions on that, guys? I hope this visual helps you.
I think this is the perfect visual for this. It really just gives you a good idea of where those colors lie and the intensity of them, right? Like they are true, intense, beautiful pigments, but adding in that base, adding in that 0.0 really gives you that that neutral tone that we're all just beautiful hair.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to add in the base because they're like, oh, but I don't want any warmth. But you guys can really, really see from like the middle image, like the middle swatch, there's no warmth in that. You know, it's a nice, cool finish. Same thing with the image all the way to the right. It's not warm at all. The base is just really pastelizing out whatever you're adding to it to make it a softer deposit. Okay, cool. How are we doing in the chat?
Good.
Oh, perfect. So you answered that. That question got answered.
Yep. I had a question on, is the middle the end result? And so we just want to recap that first little swatch is going to be the original tone. The second swatch is going to be that tone, whether it be a 10.21, 10.2, 10.1 plus 10.0 on each. And then that third little swatch is going to be the 10.2, 10.1, 10.21 straight away.
Yeah, perfect. So control swatch with base, straight tone, no base. Okay, swatch these out, guys. The more that you get, and again, I can't swatch talk enough. I love doing them more than anything in the world, but at the end, we're going to talk more about it. The more you swatch, the more you understand how your color works, the more you understand how and when to use these tools, which is awesome. Okay, but then in some cases, we're going to work with our base. Okay, sometimes we don't need to add a base because of what the hair is lifted to. There's already enough base in it that we don't need to add anything. Okay, and then there's really fun and creative ways that we can work with just pigments and not adding in a base, like this image that Amanda provided here, which I love, love, love. Okay, again, you guys have your intensives. We can use these with Satin to create custom blends. You can use these in with your regular Infinity to create custom blends. You can put these in your purple box toners. You can put these in metallics. Literally, intensives can go in anything that requires developer, which is amazing. So in this case, there are certain cases in which I don't want to add a base to a situation. I just want to add pigment. So Amanda, do you want to walk us through? I'm going to put the formula up in case, you don't have it memorized by heart, of course, but I'm going to leave that up if you want to talk about kind of this process and why you chose to use just intensives with a clear host color instead of something with a base.
Yeah, so we had wanted, this was my client, she's a younger girl, she wanted something a little bit more fun, and I wanted something that was, so she really didn't know what she wanted. She had showed me pictures of, pastelized pink. She showed me pictures of like a fuchsia purple. And I really just thought I would get a little bit more control and a little bit more longevity out of it by using Satin Clear as my base and adding in those intensives to play with versus using something like color dynamics. Like I just wanted to just play a little bit and just have a little bit more longevity. She's a younger girl. She's not going to maintain it, in the most perfect way, but so I wanted to give her a little more longevity. So yeah, so I used 80 grams of clear. I used 10 grams of 0.6, which is red. I used 30 grams of 0.2 and 20 grams of 0.7. So that 0.7, that blue, was just going to give me a little bit of depth, while that 0.6 and that 0.2 is really going to give me that violety, purpley hue. And then I used the Satin Activator Cream. So I really just mixed this up to color in the bowl. It really did process super beautifully in the bowl, which I wasn't exactly expecting. And then from there, I could just kind of add and mix how I wanted it. Super beautiful. She was super happy with it. It gave her longevity. It faded out softly. It faded out right on tone, and was really just a super fun way of kind of changing up what we, a product that we normally use more conservatively into a really fun way, which, inspires us and gets us our, creative juices flowing behind the chair too.
Yeah, absolutely. It can just get, like, we all know, we all love what we do. Like, yeah, definitely not doubting that, but you can get kind of bored, and I thought this was just like the most fun way. Like such a beautiful, like amethyst tone. And I think that it's very unique. The finish of it, it would be, I feel like for me, a challenge to create this with any other Infinity that had a base, because now you're bringing the base into play tonally, where I like what you said, that you kind of just looked in the bowl and you were like, yep, this is the color I'm getting at, kind of, if it was a semi, right? Because there's no base to it, it's just pigment. So I like that, because you can really super custom blend stuff in without worrying about what level is bringing to the table in terms of pigment as well.
Right. Like this would be comparable, I guess, to maybe like a 776, but that just to me was going to be so much heavier and so much denser with color that, if I added maybe some 0.6 to that, some red, it would be almost too bright. Yes. So this really just, like Heather said, it gave it no tonality or no level to it, and just tonality.
Yeah, because if you took the 7.76, right, we're not just adding the 0.76, we're adding tone. But of course, with affinage, we also have all of our color balanced to be able to cover gray as well. So that 776 doesn't just have the 0.76 tonality, it also has everything that lives at a level 7 built into it as well. Where if we go back to the natural remaining pigment, it's going to be some orange base to it. So as this fades, it would not if she were to use 7.76, it would fade, but it would not pastelize like this. It would just fade and look a little bit more hollow, whereas this would just gently pastelize right out of hair and stay at the same exact tonality of what was put on it. So I love this example. It's a super fun way to do fashion colors. So use the clear as your base, as your host color, as your recipe starter, if you will, and just toss in those different tonalities and really play with it. You guys are gonna love it.
Yeah, and I've actually been playing this a lot with doing that clear and doing some 0.3 in it. And it just gives a really beautiful sheen of just a super light overlay to the hair where it's not too in your face. And it's just really pretty over, you know, like a coffee shop or a level 6, even a level 7, really. So
absolutely. Yeah. Oftentimes I'm using that exact same example, like a 0.4. If I'm refreshing any of my coppers. I know this isn't about copper, but I like it because I'm just depositing copper tonality. I'm not depositing anything else. So definitely use this a lot of different ways. Challenge yourself to use it on your brunettes, challenge you to, you know, create some custom toning blends on your blondes as well, but also for your fashion hair clients. Okay, cool. So another toning trouble is talking about brightening our blondes, okay? Oftentimes when people want to go in and create really ashed out blondes, what happens is we end up with, I call it gray water blonde. It's a little dingy, it's kind of ashed out, it's really low reflection. So this would be more like the image that's to the left. It just looks, it's really ashy, but there's not a lot of life to it, okay? Whereas the image to the right of it, it's still super ashy, but it has life to it. You can see from the inside, it's kind of glowing that brightness. A lot of times what happens, you guys are gonna see this little color palette to the right, the blue, the green, and the purple. These are all of our ash tones. And what we need to remember is that ash tones in general absorb light. Okay, so a lot of times when we're creating these really icy blondes, what happens is we go in heavy with all this ash pigment, and then what happens is they absorb light, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of life to that blonde. Okay, so it's this fine balance of putting enough warmth in, because warm tones reflect light. So remember that your coppers, your reds, and your golds actually allow light to bounce off of, which give these blondes a lot of life. So it's this really fine line about making sure that you've included enough warmth into your toning process so that you're not ending up with like a gray water blonde. Okay, Amanda talks about doing this with 0.3 with her satin. Okay, you can make a ashy blonde have a little bit more boost and glow and make it appear lighter by adding in some reflection. So for example, Amanda might do 10.21, 10.2, and she might do, let's say, an eighth of the formula, 10.3 too. You know, add a little bit of a nice pastelized warmth into it to get a nice boost of glow. So that's a real difference too, is making sure that you're not going in with these really heavy ash toners with no balance or base in them, because you will get that low reflection blonde or that dingy kind of looking blonde, not one with a lot of life and a lot of brightness to it. Okay, so this formula is by Courtney Burke. She was on our ASP team. She had done beautiful blondes, but her formula exactly is that. So this is actually equal parts 10.0 and 10.21 for a really nice, beautiful icy finish. But because she did half of her formula 10.0, which the natural base at that is a nice pale yellow, it had enough warmth in it to make that blonde really bright. Whereas she would have done less of that, that 10.21 would have really kind of gone in and started to eat away at that reflection because there isn't enough warmth in it. Okay, so her tip with this is, again, making sure it stays on as long as it can so that all of those tones can process and you're not getting more of a stained, dingy kind of blonde results. Okay, any questions on that, guys?
Nope.
Making sense? Okay, good. All right. And behold, blue. If you have not yet discovered, we now have a new blue-based collection, which is absolutely unbelievable. So loved. We were custom blending this before using our intensives, and we could not be more over the moon about this. So this year we launched 8.7, 7.7, and 6.7. These are all blue-based. I did want to mention, of course, in case anybody was confused, the 10.21 is actually blue-based. I know it should say 10.7, that would make a ton of sense, but we call it a 10.21, but just keep in mind, even though that tonality, which is typically a 0.7 for blue, isn't showing up in this 10 level, understand that that truly is a 10 level blue-based color, okay? So This allows us to ice out our blondes a little bit easier. Okay, whenever you're looking for that super, super icy finish, you want to use something that's blue based. So you're going to reach for that 10.21. Okay, it's also allowing us to neutralize orange a lot easier, a lot easier. So you guys will see in the swatches off to the right. Of course, the swatch on the left is the control swatch. This has not been colored. Okay, but you can see that the undertone of it is quite yellow orange. Okay, and then the formula on the swatch to the right of that is 1/4 of the formula 8.7 and 3/4 of the formula 8.0. So you can see it actually gave that super beautiful, nice kind of creamy cappuccino neutralizing where it still has light to it. It's not overly muddy. It's just that beautiful kind of, it reminds me of like a J-Lo blonde or like a Jennifer Aniston blonde. Okay. So, and I wanted you guys to see that I chose to use only 1/4 of the 8.7 because I wanted you to see how strong it is. It's really beautiful. It's really quite heavily pigmented. So anytime you're going to go and use more than that, you can go in at half and half, that's fine. But I wanted you to see how far you can get as far as neutralizing with only 1/4 of the formula. So that's why I chose to do that just on that swatch. Okay. So if you're not already loving those blue series, I very much hope you add those to your order because they will be life changers. They're beautiful with toning in that regard, as far as making sure that you can work within that orange pre-lightening and canceling that out really nicely, but it's also really beautiful for lifting as well. Okay. And of course, we can go ahead and use these 0.7 series to also cool down our bases, unrelated to toning, but a really great benefit of the blue. Okay. All right, the next thing is zone toning. So the toning trouble that we have here is that we're getting uneven tonal results. Okay, so we need to fix it with zonal toning. This again is not an ASP image, but it was a beautiful example of how we can use separate toning in these zones. So the number one thing is when we're talking about zone toning is we need to actually identify what our natural remaining pigment is. So breaking it into segments. So for instance, in her mids in this area, we can see that her natural remaining pigment we would assume has lifted to about a 6. Okay, and then zone 2 down at the bottom, the ends of her hair, her natural remaining pigment is about a 9. If I went in just with a 9, what's going to happen to that mid shaft area? It's not going to touch it. Okay, a level 9, that pigment is too diluted at a level 9. It doesn't have enough pigment strength to be able to do all of the heavy neutralizing that we're finding at that natural remaining pigment of a 6. Okay, so what we'll have to do is mix up 2 toners. We get this question all the time. Well, you're just going to do that from root to end? No, we have to tone to the canvas we're working on. Just like if a guest was 100% white from the ears forward and they had 10% white in the back, we would mix 2 separate formulas. Same thing has to happen with toning, okay? So identify your canvas and zones and tone and formulate according to those particular zones, okay? So an example of this would be, this is just giving an example. Zone 1, I could subdue that area, okay? Which I need to do because my natural remaining pigment is orange, okay? So I'm gonna go in with a 6.7 and a 6.0. Just to be spicy, I might even add in a splash of 6.117, okay? Because it's green, green, blue base. That's only gonna help me with those really deep kind of orangish tones, okay? So I'm gonna tone that area with that. And then in zone 2, she's lifted to a yellow natural remaining pigment, but I'm actually gonna roll with that and I'm gonna enhance it. So in zone 1, I'm subduing. Zone 2, I'm enhancing that yellow, and I'm gonna go in with, say, like a 9.34 in order to do that. Okay, so really making sure that you're taking the time to tone appropriately for what you're working on is key. So in situations like this, we're probably not going to be able to tone at the bowl. We're probably going to have to bring them back to the bowl and apply it in 2 separate segments as well. It can take you an hour to put all these foils in or to do this balayage work or this freehand work, right? Don't cheat the end result by lazy toning. I will tell you that right now, okay? In every situation in which you try to do something like this at the bowl, you've spent all this time to make it really beautiful. The toning is the cherry on the cake. It is the icing. It is the best part of it. It's when all that refinement happens. So in some situations, you're going to have to treat it and spend the time on toning as well, making sure you're doing it in the right regions and not cutting corners and trying to do it all at the bowl. There are definitely appropriate times to tone at the bowl, and there's times when there's not. Just identify that. Okay? Any questions? We're good?
Yep, all good.
Cool. All right. So these are just a couple of mid-process images I wanted to show you. This is my client, Lindsay. Of course, I didn't get a before picture of her because I'm a hairdresser like you guys and I forget that all the time. Okay. But what I wanted to show you is this blue arrow is actually Lindsay's base color. She was an all over color treated 5.0. Okay, so she came in and she just wanted really multi-tonal dimension. So I maintained her root with a 5.0 with converter, no big deal. Basic, no one needs to see that. Okay, then I went in and I chose to use the B Brown series with B8. So I wanted to go in and lift that level 5 out a little bit to create some really beautiful dimension. And I did that using 30 volume. So on this first picture that you guys can see, oh, I knew I was going to do that. The first picture you guys can see, this is again her starting color. Okay, this is one of her in-between swatches of hair. And then over here, you're gonna see where her B8 was. So you'll see how that's all lifted really, really beautiful between that. So you can see the difference between where we started and what we used for our dimension. And then I went in and used system 9 with 20 volume with anti-yellow additive in order to achieve the image that you see on the right, which is her processing picture. So I was able to get her up to about like a orange, yellow, orange kind of finish within her foil. Okay, and so we were able to get this result. Her before picture again would have just been an all over a 5.0, but we were able to get a lot of really beautiful toning and beautiful dimension out of that. So I did her face frame and her money piece. I did change my developer and bump that up a little bit in the area because I wanted more brightness there. So what I did was when I toned was I sectioned out that same face frame or money piece section and I did some zonal toning. So I went in with Satin 9.23, 10 grams of that, and then I cut that in half with some clear. So I was able to get our nice pastelized 9.23. I wanted something a little bit brighter than that. So that's why I did that with the clear. And then the global toner that happened everywhere else except for that money piece was the Satin 7.0, 30 grams with 10 grams 0.000. And then I just did 4 grams of 0.2 intensives just to kind of swallow up a little bit of that yellow so I could get a more kind of cooler finish. So I did use that with the Satin Activator Cream. Okay, so the global toning you can see gives you a lot of good control, but then that face frame kind of falls over all of that and gives a lot of beautiful, very easy multi-tonal dimension that I'm able to achieve just by zonal toning. If I obviously didn't section out that money face frame piece, everything would have just looked like the back of her head and she would look like just 2 colors instead of 3. Okay, cool. Any questions on that?
Kind of a little bit on your lightning process-ish. Anti-yellow additive, how much do you recommend you mixing into your lightener?
Perfect. So it really depends on your starting level. I used 3 grams on her because I was starting at such a dark level. We really recommend like level 6, 7, and 8 is great for anti-yellow additive. Because she was so close to that and she was a 5, I did do 3 grams. So if she were say a level 8 and I was lifting, I would only need, did I say grams? I'm sorry guys, centimeters. I'm in totally the wrong form of measurement. So 3 centimeters I used on her because she was so dark. If she was more like a level 8, I would have used just like 1 centimeter. Okay, so it really depends on what base you're starting at, but I do have a slide for that for you later, I believe, I think. If not, I'll bring one up, no problem. Okay, any other, I hope that helped. That was good?
Yep, right, cool. I put it in the chat too in case.
Yeah.
That.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, we are here now. Do we have any questions? Does anyone want to chime in on anything? No, we're doing good. All right, stop me whenever you need to. Cool. More toning troubles, okay? When we get off tone or kind of khaki results or a muddy result, that would kind of be like that one of those overtone images that I showed you earlier with the girl at the top image that had like the blue. And then she had this weird like khaki color in between that. That would be a big toning trouble when you're getting really off tone kind of things. And we're gonna fix that with neutralizing correctly across the color wheel, of course. So in these images, you're gonna see, let's look at the first set of 3. So we have a yellow circle, we have a 10.1 represented this way as green. And then we have the bottom circle is going to be what we've pre-lightened to. Okay, so if I've pre-lightened to this and I put 10.1 on it, I get this, okay? Because the law of color tells me that yellow and green make yellow-green. And that's exactly what I've got here, okay? Then we move to the next group of 3 where I have my pre-lightened base. And then I have 10.21, which is more of a blue base. I go ahead and I add that onto the yellow base, and now I have yellow plus blue, and we know that that, according to the law of color, makes green. So also not the result that we're looking for when we're looking at toning appropriately, okay? The third image we have, of course, the yellow with the 10.2, okay? If I go ahead and I put that on top of that, we have neutralization. You can see how that happens, right? So yellow and violet give us that perfectly toned neutralized result that we want. So you can, I hope that you can see from this image how if you're not neutralizing across appropriately, you end up with whatever color comes between those other colors, okay? If you need a refreshment on this, find a toddler and some watercolor paint, because that's what works for me in my life right now, okay? So definitely go back to thinking of your days with Play-Doh when you're mixing yellow and green and they make that, you know, whatever it might be. But I think sometimes removing the thought process from hair and thinking about it just as color can also really help as well. Cool. All right, this is just a separate visual. Okay, this is just some cellophane that I have that's tinted, and we have yellow. Okay, this is our base that we're starting with, and I'm gonna go and put violet on top of it. And look at that, we have neutralization, okay? So that's showing you always that those two colors will always neutralize out. Here we have orange, okay? And then I go ahead and I put blue over that. Again, I have neutralizing. That's how we're gonna neutralize across the color wheel. Okay, red and of course green. Pop that green over, magic neutralizing again, okay? So making sure that you're going completely across the color wheel will always, every single time ensure perfect results, okay? Cool, spotty deposit. That's another big toning trouble as well, which means that we've identified that the cause of that is a porosity problem, okay? So we're gonna fix it with a couple of tools. Your active pH rebalancer, guys, if you're not using this yet, it is such an inexpensive product that does so much for your toning game. I can't emphasize it enough. This is super simple and easy to use. Pre-lighten the hair, pull their foils out, do whatever, shampoo them, towel dry them, hit it with the pH rebalancer before you put your toner on. The results are unbelievable in terms of making sure that you get a really nice, beautiful, even result. You're going in, you're bringing that pH level back to where it needs to be, and it's really helping. About 30 sprays through the hair. I like to kind of section it up, pull occipital down, spray that 5 or 6 times, pull the next layer down 5 or 6 times, and do so until I've done about 30 pumps throughout the hair, and then apply my toner. You guys, it is the most amazing thing ever. I do not do any kind of gray toning specifically when I'm doing gray and silver looks without this product, because it is so clutch in making sure that your deposit's going to be even. Okay. You also have protein additive, which we very briefly talked about earlier. This is really great. It's again, super simple and easy to use. 1 pump per 50 milliliters or 50 grams of color. Go ahead and put that right in, mix it up. It's going to help with equalizing that porosity during that process of toning as well. I actually double up on both of these when I'm toning. And if I'm not using protein additive, then I'm actually using Vitaplex Step 1 as well as the active pH rebalancer. Okay. That's going to get mixed in just with your color as well. And then of course, finish with Vitaplex Step 2. We're not going to go totally into that today because it's really not about that, but I am more than happy to answer any questions about any of these 3 afterwards if you guys want to, but just know that these are some really great tools that you have for helping with that porosity problem. Again, it takes 2 seconds to use these products, but the benefit of it in terms of your end result, it's so worth that 2 seconds. Cool. All right, another big toning trouble is our cool toners that are brassing out, okay? So the guest has their hair done, it looks absolutely wonderful. They leave, they shampoo twice, and you're getting the phone call, my hair's so brassy, I don't know what happened. It's like, oh, my toner fell out, okay? Remember, that's probably a stain. We probably haven't left it on long enough. That might have a lot to do with it. But the other thing is I think sometimes we so badly want to work on what we want, not what we've got. So when you're pre-lightening, we really have to tone for what we've got, not what you want. So if you're starting at a level 5 and you know your end result, you want it to be a 9 or a 10, but you only got her to an 8, you can't tone for what you want. You can't tone for a 9 or a 10, you gotta tone for an 8, okay? Basically what happens is if you're toning with a 10, that pigment is pastelized so much that there's not enough of it to work with the natural remaining pigment that you're working with at a level 8. So you always have to tone at the level or down the level. You cannot tone up a level. You're not going to get any kind of liftability out of a toner. It's not magically going to take 2 levels of natural remaining pigment out and somehow leave you with a beautiful platinum level 10 if you're starting with an 8, right? I know we all want to be magicians, but that's where we are. So we can't tone this level, level 8, using a level 10, okay? We have to instead tone with an 8, but only if you want a really natural warm result. If you're looking for a really cool result, even at a level 8, you have to make sure that you remove all of that remaining pigment so you can deposit just that and you're not working with also the issue of the natural remaining pigment in addition to your toner. Okay, so I hope that that helps. Always, the motto always has to be tone with what you've got, not what you want. Okay, any questions on that, Amanda? Anything you want to add to that?
Nope, perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, pre-toning, why this is super important. At times with certain services, it's really beneficial to pre-tone the hair before you put that final toner on, okay? It really just allows us to go in and kind of clean out that canvas and give an extra level of tonal protection. So in this particular image, this is from a previous class, a Going Gray class, but you'll see that the before picture of Michelle is off to the left. She's about a level 8, some spots she's about a 7. She wanted to embrace the fact that she's 100% white. So we went in and lifted her, and then this middle image that you'll see is just her with her lightener on, okay? So you can see it's lifted pretty beautifully. It's lifted super evenly, but at the same time, there's like just enough yellow in that I know that if I just go in with the silver, I might end up having some of that silver, which is kind of like a green blue base, might play off the yellow a little bit too much, and I might not get that really clean, beautiful silver. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm removing this yellow before I go and put on my final toner, because I don't want that yellow to affect my final toner, okay? So I'm doing this a lot with my Gothics when I'm trying to, again, achieve these really silvery or white or silvery or white, or any of my ice blondes. Sometimes it's beneficial to do that. Okay, this helps with balancing the canvas really well and also helps to layer for longevity. So now when Michelle fades from this picture all the way to the right, she's going to fade out to a really balanced, beautiful platinum blonde, not a pale yellow blonde, because I've layered in that toner. Okay, so this is Michelle's formulation on the finished result. Not going to go super totally into that. If you guys want to take a picture of it, you can, but I will explain that Formula 1 is done at the root all over. And then what I've actually done for Formula 2 is what you see here from the root down. So she just needed a little bit less tonal. You'll see in Formula 1, she doesn't have the 0.2 intensive added in because she was a natural white. I didn't really have to play into that at all. So I just added the extra violet in where she had been pre-lightened, because that's where I had more yellow. Okay, if I just took Formula 1 and put it all over, okay, well, what's going to happen at the root area where she's white and I don't have any yellow? I might see some of that violet come through on the root area because there's nothing for it to neutralize. So it's going to come forward. Okay, so that's why the 2 separate formulas. Okay, any questions on that?
Nope, just that it's so beautiful and amazing.
Cool.
We just had one question.
Yeah.
Bleach wash to reach the right lightness, then tone.
Does it say, can you bleach wash?
Yeah.
Can you bleach? I'm reading it right now and I can't say bleach wash. Bleach wash. Can you bleach wash to reach the right lightness, then tone? I mean, Tina, if you can unmute yourself, do you mean, like, for instance, in the middle picture, could I have just, instead of doing a separate toner, bleach washed her again and then toned?
Well, I mean, if you just need just an extra lift to reach the right, to just reach the right lightness.
So yeah, like, so basically you've done, like, let's just say it's, you've done root to end pre-lighten, and they're like at a 9 and you want them to be at a 10. So, I mean, you could, if you've maxed out your time, for instance, like our lighteners are going to stay active for 60 minutes. So if it's at 45 minutes, just let it keep going. you know, or you could definitely reapply right on top of it before rinsing out. I'm not a huge fan of bleach wash. You certainly could. This is my preference. Okay. You certainly could. There's no reason not to. I just find that oftentimes I create more of a porosity issue when I bleach wash again versus just going back through again and applying fresh lightener over, or rinsing out and applying fresh lightener again. That's just what I find in my own personal experience, but you certainly can.
I think
You
it
certainly
would
can.
maybe depend on what you're lifting through. Like if you're lifting through
Yes.
artificial pigment, I know you can, you know, apply lightener onto damp hair and get that extra lift. But I think if it was natural hair, you'd be able to like bump out that extra. But I feel like if it was colored hair, you want that full liftability of the lightener. Then I would go through and like reapply on fresh hair, or reapply over your lightener application.
Yeah, I think it really super depends on the situation that you're in and where you're going with it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking for a result like this, where it's a pure white, I'm not going to risk it. I've spent 5 hours pre-lightening her. I'm going to go back. I'm not going to throw that all away on hoping that that works. I'm more apt to reapply. But yeah, I guess it really depends on where you're working towards. Yeah, and your client's hair type. Totally. But a wet on wet application is also an option, again, depending on where you want to go, how much time you have. Cool.
Question on your lightener. Do you remember what developer you lightened her with?
10 and 20 on Michelle. I started in the back with 10 volume and I finished up at the top with 20.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, and she was definitely anti-yellow additive the whole way through, as well as Vitaplex, all the way through her lightener, as well as both of her toners. Perfect. Okay, and pH rebalancer. Okay, not pH rebalancer, I'm sorry, active pH reconstructor at that too. Okay, some additional toning tools for cool toners that are brassing out. This would be really great for home care. This would be a great option, the anti-orange one for that swatch that I showed you guys earlier with the 8.7 and the 8.0. You have guests that you're toning to that, and you need to make sure that they're not having any kind of brass poke through. The anti-orange rescue kit would be great for them. That's going to have your shampoo, your conditioner, as well as a mask. The mask is also going to be tinted, and it's going to actually have a bit stronger pigment than the regular conditioner would have. Okay, in this swatch, I wanted to show you guys the swatch all the way to the right is the control swatch. And then what I did is I took 2 of those swatches. One of them I put in anti-yellow in a bowl with like 30 grams of water. And then I just did 5 grams of the shampoo. And I left that swatch sit in that little bath for 5 minutes. Then I did the same thing with the anti-orange. I did 5 grams of anti-orange shampoo in with 30 grams of water, and I let it sit for 5 minutes. Pulled them out. This is how beautifully they toned out. So anti-yellow would be ideal for your ice or platinum kind of blondes, or your silver ladies. You could also definitely retail the anti-orange to anyone who wants to be that really icy silver. That would help as well. Just keep in mind it is a stronger pigment. So you may either want them to dilute it if they need to with a regular shampoo, or use it every other day of shampooing instead of every time they shampoo. But these are really, really amazing toning options for keeping things cool at home care, which is awesome. Okay. These also come in back bar sizes as well. Okay. So these are also some toning tools that would be more conditioning based, and these would definitely help to keep brassing out at bay. These also can be retailed, which is amazing. So you've got a couple of options. These are just true semis, so these don't get mixed with any developer whatsoever. So I feel very comfortable retailing these to my guests to keep their blonde toning beautiful throughout the life of their wear. So these semis would remain on the cuticle layer for about 6 to 10 washes, which is awesome. And they're also really ideal for doing some soft toning at the bowl, or again, for retailing options. You have the Hot Shots Quicksilver, which is a nice pale violet, which you can use as a treatment behind the bowl. You can also, again, retail this. They can use this at home once a week, for example, as a mask. You also have Platinum Mist and Color Dynamics. It has a little bit more tint to it than the Quicksilver does, which is great. I love that on my gray ladies, as well as the anti-yellow deep treatment mask. So this is the same mask that comes in this kit. Okay, this is the anti-yellow one. There's also an anti-orange one. And this again is much more heavily pigmented. If you were using this product before, it would have been the Cool Blonde Illuminator. It's just new packaging, new name. Okay, so that's not gone, which is great because that's beautiful. And this is just really great when you've lifted to a really beautiful place with toning, and maybe you don't necessarily need to mix a toner, but you still want to do some kind of tonal assist at the bowl. This is great because it will give you that tonal assist, but it will also be your conditioner. So you're cutting out that full step of having to tone, which is awesome. Okay, any questions there, Amanda?
I had a question from Megan. She asked about the porosity, and I'm not sure if that was relating to like the anti-orange and the anti-yellow, equalizing out porosity or whatnot. But
yeah, if you want to unmute yourself, Megan, you can certainly ask.
Okay, I want to know if I put that on, say, using level 9 or system 9.
Yeah.
Is it going to pigment the hair to purple or violet?
So are you talking about the anti-yellow mask?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. If you've lifted up and you're at a place that's really like a nice pale yellow, if you leave it on for quite a long time, it could definitely tone it to like a kind of lavender lilac kind of color. You leave it on less time, you're not going to get as much pigment. It is a semi-permanent color at the end of the day that just has a really good conditioning base to it. So the longer you leave it on, you're going to get a little bit more depth.
The condition of her hair is amazing, but it's like, yeah, you're a little lilac until you wash it out.
Yeah. So if that's the case, you can always kind of dumb it down either with pastelizer or whatever other conditioner you're using. That way you can kind of dilute out the tone if you need to, if it's just too strong. But another option would be, instead of using the mask, just use the regular conditioner. It doesn't have as much tint to it. It's kind of already diluted out a bit for you that way.
Okay. Because, yeah, the blonde anti-yellow shampoo.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that works. I leave it on for maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, you can just see from those swatches how much toning it did in such a short amount of time. It works beautifully, which is great. Just keep in mind, I always tell my really, really light platinum girls, I'll say, you know, if you're someone who shampoos every day, which of course I encourage them not to, I say if you're using the anti-yellow, your hair is already more porous because we pre-lighten. So there is a chance that you could get a little bit of color stain. So what I suggest to people, especially if they're really fine, is to just maybe use that product every other shampoo instead of every shampoo, which again will just kind of help keep that overtone at bay. But yeah, you can always go down to a different level of pigment. For example, like the Hot Shots Quicksilver is not as pigmented. It does still have that light violet assist to it, but it doesn't have as much pigment as the anti-yellow treatment. So basically, if we're looking at this slide right now, they progressively get more intense in pigment, where Quicksilver would be the least intense, Platinum Mist would be middle of the road, and anti-yellow deep mask treatment would definitely be the heavy hitter neutralizer.
Okay.
Okay, good. I hope that helps. Yeah,
no, because I end up getting my clients, I tone them too long to where they're lilac.
Yeah. So just either cut it with some regular conditioner and that will help for sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But you're welcome. And in that situation, I have clients that are lilac. You know, I have this client, she's a really cute, short pixie. And what I do with her is I tone her with a straight 10.2 because you guys saw that swatch. It's like a beautiful violet tone. And then for increased longevity, I have her go home and use the anti-yellow deep treatment mask for every single conditioning she does. So it's just building in that semi. So then when she starts to have it fade out, she's faded out to a beautiful 10.2, but the anti-yellow, I'm purposefully over pigmenting her hair so I can get that pretty lilac tone. So use it when you need it to in that way, and then pull back from it when you don't need as much. So it's kind of multi-use with there, which is really nice. Cool.
Okay, yeah, I was talking in the chat about the T series.
Oh, the toners?
Yes.
Yep. Well, coming up to those, I think in 3 slides. So yeah, we'll get there. Awesome.
Okay, yeah, because I was relying on the T series, not mixing the 10.2 with converter.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
You can use either one. Yeah, absolutely. So here's another great toning tool, System Blonde Anti-Yellow Additive, which we did talk about in a couple slides, but this has just a little bit more information. Okay, this is going to be an anti-yellow additive that goes into your lightener. It can go into any lightener. Okay, so what it's going to do is it's going to be a cream-based violet pigmented additive, which is going to go in and eliminate any kind of yellow tones during the lifting process. We all need that, right? So everyone should be using this in all of their lightening. It's incredible. Okay, why we're using it, it allows us to use a really, really small amount of pigment, which you guys will see in the chart that's all the way to the left below the tube. It shows you 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters. Okay, save the box that this comes in, because on the back there's the measurement little tool. You're going to actually go ahead and squirt it right on the measurement tool and then wipe it off and put it into your bowl. That box has a coating on it that doesn't allow it to stain, so you can continue to use it, which is great. Or I actually just cut mine out outside of the box into like the little square that it is. I put it in like a laminate protector, and I just like with clear tape it right to my mixing station, and I can squirt it right onto the station. And again, it's got that tape over it so it doesn't stain, but it's my little measurement tool right there. That works great for me because I'm really bad about keeping boxes. So, and I know that I destroy them, that's just me. So that has been a great to like just cut that out and put it right onto my station like that. Okay, so you're using this to provide clean blonde results when lifting through levels 6, 7, and 8. Okay, again, can be used in all lighteners across the board, and how, again, we're adding the centimeter depending on how much unmixed lightener we have. Okay, so if you want to take a picture of that slide, that way you have the tech information on it, that'd be great. Otherwise, there is a QR code on that box. You can scan it and always get that information as well. Okay, some other toning tools. These are some of my favorite tools to use for toning. This first one you guys are going to see is a Wow comb. I use one that it's similar to this. It's called the Roller Ka, R-O-L-L-E-R-K-A comb. What's really great about this comb is that it's a nice wide tooth comb, but this red section in the middle is actually a roller. So when I'm doing color toning melting or blending or even color melting, I'm able to use this comb, and what happens is, depending on how I go into the hair, the color is going to catch on this roller and kind of allow it to kind of sweep down into the mid shaft a little bit, so I can get a really beautiful color melt and color blend. If I was just using a regular wide tooth comb, I might actually start to remove color from the root area. This doesn't really do that. It just kind of rolls off the surface layer of color and it allows it to blend down. So this is how I'm doing a lot of my zonal toning as well. I'll go in and put that first zone tone here, and then I'll kind of use that comb to roll it through. That way I'm not getting a really hard line. I'm kind of marrying the two colors into themselves. But this comb, by far, I use this on almost every single client that I have for any kind of root color that I'm blending down or melting down, any kind of toning that I'm doing. I use this constantly, and I have 100 of them. So they're amazing. I highly suggest that. You could also just use a regular wide tooth comb. I do that on some occasions when I actually don't want as much color blending. I just want to kind of really lightly spread some color around, but I don't need to rely on a roller. I might do that, or an even more fine based wide tooth comb. Just make sure that you're never putting the spine of this right against the scalp, because again, it'll actually remove color because those bristles are too close together. Okay, and then this comb all the way to the right, guys, this bronze one, this is actually a comb that we make. It's our Kotoko treatment comb. So when you're doing any of our kind of Kotoko conditioning treatments, this can come with those. We use them for this way, but I love this for money piece toning because the brush is nice and small, so I can just scoop it in, place it right where I need to when I'm doing money piece or face frame toning. And then of course it's got the comb on the back side, so I can kind of spread it through if I need to, or I'm using it for root smudges in those little delicate areas where I don't want a big giant comb. I absolutely love that for doing some toning as well. Okay, any questions on tools, guys? Feeling good?
All good in the chat, but yeah, I totally love that Wow comb, that Kotoko comb. So perfect for toning.
Like, how did we tone without a Wow comb before this? This is like honestly the best thing ever.
Especially root blends, like it just it's so beautiful, especially with like massively like large hair. It just is perfect.
Totally. And like if you go into the hair, like if this is the head, right? And I go into it with the comb in this way and just kind of brush it down, really, really minimal smudge. But if I go in with the comb and turn it so the roller is on that product and then I drag it down, now I'm getting a really good drag and smudge. So depending on how you use that comb too, really dictates how much spreadability you get. So it's great for wet. I use it sometimes for dry too, even if I'm like piecing out like pre-waved sections of hair. A nice clean roller comb like that is great. That top little that button at the end just pops right off so the whole roller can come out and it's easy to clean. It's awesome. Cool. All right, toners. Here we go, Megan. You wanted toners. We're talking toners. All right. So these are the toners that come pre-blended in the 2-ounce purple boxes. Okay, so whenever I refer to like toning, I'm usually referring to infinity with converter, but these are actual toners that are already pre-blended for you. So these are going to be 5 that will allow you to enhance warmth and give soft, delicate tones. These are your warm options. So this would be like a T32, which is a beige, T26, which is a rose blonde, T24 almond, T135 is relatively new. That's our mushroom blonde. That's awesome. You guys are going to see that on a swatch later, as well as a T22. Okay, then we have 3 tones that really neutralize for you. They're going to give really cool supreme blonde results. So that would be your T21S, T21, and T2. So the numbers will transfer over the same ways tonally that our regular color does. So for example, a T32 is going to be a T standing for toner, and then it's going to be gold violet. Okay, same thing if we're looking at like the T135, it'll be green, gold, and then mahogany. Okay, so that all transfers over the same. The cool ones will have slight lift action to them. Okay, the purpose of that is we really want to go and clean out the blonde before we're depositing. So Tina, this, depending on your situation, you mentioned a bleach wash beforehand. This in some situations may work out just fine, where you could use the toners, you know, the T series, say a T21S, because it has lift action in it, it may be just enough to kind of get that last bit of warmth out of the hair before depositing. Okay, so that's what's really beneficial to these cool ones, is that they do have that ability to provide a nice, soft, gentle lift before they deposit, but not as much as a converter not sitting without sit time would do. So it's kind of an option there too. These are all, of course, very intermixable. You can get super creative with these, which is great. You guys will notate that the T21S, I just wanted to explain a bit about what that is. Tonally, it's the same exact thing as the T21. But if you guys look at that swatch, the 2 of them together, you see the T21S and the T21. The T21 looks a bit darker. Okay, so the T21S just has a little bit more liftability in it, which provides a more sheer finish, but the same tone as the T21 provides. So I really love the T21S when I'm doing like a double process blonding to tone. I feel like it just really cleans out so much nicer. But if I don't need as much liftability, I'll just use the T21 and I'll get that nice blue base toner. Okay, so these are also true demis, which is great. The warm toners will have no lift action at all. Those will be truly just deposit only. Okay, so you'll see in the picture all the way up to the upper right, that's a T24 on here, a beautiful almond blonde. It's just stunning. It's a beautiful, nice, balanced result. Very, again, kind of J-Lo, kind of Jennifer Aniston kind of finish. It's a beautifully, beautifully balanced color. And then over to the right, you'll see a T21S, platinum, 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 bright and just absolutely beautiful blonde. Okay, does anybody have any questions on the toners so far? No, we're good.
Well, actually, it's
Yeah.
Megan again.
Hey, Megan.
Okay, so I've been using T22 a lot because of the purple. So if I already get her to a level, say 10, I should be using T21S.
It depends on what you want for tone. So the T22, you guys are going to see it actually has a little sun in the upper right-hand corner, which means that it's actually going to be considered a warm base. So if you're looking to lift her and get her more of like a cool, clean blonde, and you need violet, I would instead use a T2. So the T2 is going to be violet, whereas the T22 is definitely geared to be more of a fashion color. If you needed to tone it down even more, I would just use like a little bit of intensive in with the T2, but you're not going to get the liftability benefit of the T22 because it's falling under the warm category. It won't have any lift action to it.
Okay, yeah, so I guess I need T2 instead of 22.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll give you, if you don't want any kind of lilac or violet kickback, it will help give a more balanced result. And you can see here the difference too between the two swatches, the T21 and the T2. The T2 definitely has a little bit more warmth to it still. It's a beautiful neutralized, clean blonde, where the T21 definitely has more of an icy kind of finish to it. So it really just depends on where you want to end up tonally.
Yeah, she wants, like, I have a couple clients who want to be the picture on the right.
Yeah, so T21S would be ideal. Just get her lifted definitely up to a nice pale level 10.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
You're welcome. So the mix ratio on your, go ahead.
Excuse me, I do have a question about
Yeah.
the toners. I have a client that I was highlighting and she decided that she just wanted to be all over blonde.
Okay.
So then I went in and lightened all the dark hairs that I hadn't been highlighting up to about level 10, pale yellow.
Okay.
I did put the T21S on her, and it seemed like after it started processing, all the strands that I had been highlighting beforehand started turning purple.
Yeah.
So is this like an instance where I should add that 10.0 to it?
Yeah, because I can see why it would have. That hair that had previously been highlighted beforehand has seen some days.
Yeah.
You know, so its porosity is going to be different than the newly bleached highlighted pieces. So in that case, yeah, I might have switched, instead of using the toners, I might have gone over to just a 10.0 with a 10.21. That way you can dictate how much base gets in there. Whereas these are going to be pre-blended the way that they are.
I think that's a perfect place, Jillian, to add in that active pH rebalancer too, to give your hair just a little bit more control.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
because that's exactly what happened. The porosity on those older highlights, they've been through more, so they're going to suck up anything. Whereas the new ones, that hair is in better tact, so it's going to take color differently. So yeah, the pH rebalancer, the protein additive, or the Vitaplex would have all been great options to add to that and could have definitely helped.
I did add the Vitaplex to the bleach when I brought her up, but I didn't think about putting in the toner.
Oh yeah, toss that right in the toner.
But
absolutely.
At the end of it all, I feel like I took off the toner earlier than I could have, because the hair that I had just bleached was still a little bit of that pale yellow.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, that's those situations where I just want to dictate how much base I put in sometimes, and knowing what I'm working with porosity, though you may have the assist of those 3 porosity agents, you might need the security of knowing exactly how much you have in there just to allow it to work a little bit longer. So that's kind of the difference about when you choose toners versus when you choose the regular Infinity with converter. That has a lot to do with it too, is how much base you want in the product.
Yeah, I was going to say, what kind of formula would I do for that? Like half and half?
So she was trying, yeah, I always start at half and half base, half whatever tone I'm adding to it, because it gives me a really good baseline as to how quickly they're going to accept those kind of ashier tones. If I know that I could have left that on for if I leave it on for 25 minutes and it's beautiful, that's great. But I know that if I did half and half next time, I could probably do a third base with 2/3 of the ash of my choice. And I might only need to let it sit on for 15 minutes because I know that the hair won't turn that color and it can handle more ash pigment. But half and half is always a great place to start.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, cool. Any others, guys?
Not on toning, but I do, just before I forget, because I know a couple of people had this question. Back on Michelle, do you remember what lighter you had used? Was it System 9?
Light?
I
think it's light. Yeah, I think it's light. I can totally check once we do like Q&As after, but I'm pretty sure that I use light on her.
Perfect.
Awesome. Cool. So mix ratios with our toners, okay? Your standard mix ratio for toners, this would be the T series as well as converter with the regular infinity, would be 1 to 2. Swatch is a 1 part color, 2 part developer. That's going to be able to give you swatch results, okay? Then you can also always get creative and use an intense mix. At a 1-to-1 ratio, it'll give you more pigment rich results. So I particularly love this on a color like the T26. I love the rose blonde. It's beautiful. This top swatch that you see here is a really soft kind of sheer, beautiful rose blonde. But if I want to see more of that rose, I can just change my mix ratio to be 1-to-1. So now you can see when I do that, I'm seeing more of that kind of rose color come through. So instead of using an intensive or anything like that, I can also just bump my mix ratio up and get more pigment rich and pigment heavy results. So I love doing something like this for like pinwheel toning, right? Instead of just doing T26 all over with 1 to 2, I might mix both of these up and do panels, do T26 at a 1 to 2, T26 at a 1 to 1, and alternate all around the head. That way I'm building in dimension even in my toners, which is really, really beautiful and fun. And it just kind of elevates the interest to the next level by doing something as simple as just changing how much developer I'm putting in. So again, you can do that with your metallics, which we'll talk about, your toners, any of our products really, which is great. Okay. All right, so onto metallics. These are also toners that we have. These used to be categorized as permanent. They have now been changed to be metallic toners instead, which is great because they really finish beautifully over clean blonde hair. You want to make sure that when you're using these, that you are, for swatch results, you are doing this on pre-lightened, clean blonde hair. So no yellow tones, palest yellow possible will be able to give you swatch results. I often use something like the mahogany violet or the copper rose on bases that are a little bit deeper. I don't get swatch results, but I get that beautiful metallic finish too. So just know that the result on the swatch may not be the same if you haven't lifted up to a true yellow, but of course you can still use the pigments in it if you're using something deeper. Okay, so these are the options that we have for the metallic toners. Okay, these are some metallic examples as well. Okay, so the image that you see on to the left, this is my client Libby. We used the metallic pearl rose. I did 1/3 of the formula with 1/3 of the formula 10.2 and then 1/3 of the formula 7.76 for a little bit more depth. But you can see that it got this really nice kind of metallic-y finish to it, which is really fun. And I did that with a 1-to-1 ratio with converter. You guys will see at the top to the right of the bowl and brush, it tells you the different mix ratios you can use. Okay, so 1-to-1 will give maximum tonal deposit, which is what the actual swatches show you guys. So the swatches are 1-to-1. If you're looking for a softer tonal deposit, 1 to 1.5, and a really nice sheer tonal deposit, ultra soft would be a mixed ratio of 1 to 2. So that would be more like the most gentle kind of overlay. Okay, process time on your metallics is going to be 25 minutes minimum. Okay. Or you can go to a full 45 minutes in order to get the most deep, most rich natural results. So that's what I did on Libby here. I had pre-lightened her hair in these peekaboo colors previously. So when she came back, she was already pre-lightened. I needed to do gray coverage at the same time. So I went and I applied her root area, used my wow comb to spread that down. And then I went in and took my metallic toner with my other options and processed it through her ends and then set that timer for 45 minutes so that the metallic tone was done at the same time as her root color. Okay, so that's just some fun ways to use metallics. Any questions on those guys? Nope. Oh, cool. All right, so last we have Bree. This is my client Bree. I used ice cream lightener on her, which is an ammonia-free lightener. I used 10 volume where I started and I finished with 20 volume. Her natural base is a 4 we were using. She was color treated as well. So I maintained her natural with 4.0, half, and then half 4.036. And I used my ice cream to lighten her to about a level 8. So you guys will see as I remove these foils, she's that really yellow, slightly really soft yellow orange kind of finish, but beautifully lifted all the way through. No banding, no anything. I can't tell you how amazing our lighteners are. Amanda, have you ever worked with a lightener that doesn't lift? Like every other lightener I've used, it's like you can see every retouch they ever had in terms of banding.
Yeah,
ours
sure.
don't do that.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the days of today where, you know, people aren't just getting the same color every single time. Like you said, they're doing different color root touch-ups, you know, especially if they were doing their own touch-ups, maybe during COVID and things like that, depending on if salons were closed or not. So yeah, they just lift beautifully. They lift clean. They lift even. They're great.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, Bree she's been with me for 13 years and she has been everything. She's always been primarily dark, but she's been everything. We've played with tone a ton. So be able to get a beautiful, clean finish like that is just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you can't deny there's no banding at all. It's beautiful. The hair's in really good shape. We flip-flop her color all the time. So Vitaplex is definitely key for this as well, but you can see she's gotten to a really beautiful level 8 that way. Okay, so then this is Bree's finished result. So we just did an all over face framing, all over formula for her, which was 8.24. We did 8.7 and 8.0. I didn't want anything that teetered too cool because I didn't want it to deepen it at all. So I wanted to make sure there was enough warmth in it where she could get some really beautiful soft kind of dimension. But the 8.7 was amazing in helping knocking out any of that orange. And the 8.24, I utilized the 0.2 from that in order to kick out some yellow, but I didn't want it all gone. So I used the natural base as well as a little bit of that 0.4 from the 824 to keep it lively still. So that's kind of what we use for Bree, but just beautiful toning, nice strong pigments, dilute it with your base when you need to, and you can get really beautiful balanced results.
Okay, it's Megan again.
Hi,
I have
Megan.
a question. I was very uncomfortable about using ice cream.
Yep.
Because they said the overlap, you don't want to overlap.
Right.
Is that different now?
Yeah, no. So realistically, any lightener on the back of it is going to tell you to not overlap, right?
But yet, like you said, we do it anyways.
We do. So the thing, because we know we're hairdressers, we break all the rules, right? But the important thing about ice cream to remember is that ice cream is unique in that you're only ever using 10 volume and 20 volume. Okay. So 10 volume with ice cream is going to act like 30 volume. 20 volume in ice cream is going to act like 40 volume. So with Bree, she has been a bunch of different colors, but we rarely ever highlight her. Rarely. I mean, she always stays in the level 3-4 range. So I felt very comfortable going in with ice cream and 10 to 20 volume because I knew that there wasn't a ton of highlights underneath that hair. If Bree was the guest that flip-flopped light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, I had to be really careful if I was going to choose to use ice cream, because if I used 10 volume on her, it would have been like using 30. And if she has had a hair history like that, I would never use 30 volume and a conventional lightener with her. So I would have used a different kind of lightener. But because she has such a dark base and there was so much color on there, I needed kind of a supersonic lifter. So that's when that choice came into play for me to use ice cream instead of something else, because I could keep the developer low.
My go-to is light.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically my go-to is light or it's system 9. But in this situation with Bree, ice cream is really great to use on super, super dark levels because you can keep the cuticle nice and not blown open by using the low developers, but you still get the benefit of the high percentage developers using ice cream. So there's just a time and a place for all. If I was going to use light with her, I would have to use a 30 volume or a 20 volume.
But yeah, I can use ice cream with 10 and get the same results.
Exactly. Just keep in mind that the 10 with ice cream is going to be like a 30 volume in light. So if you wouldn't put 30 volume in light on your client, don't do 10 in ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. All right. Anyone else, guys?
So I'm from California. Everyone wants to be blonde.
Right. So ice cream you wouldn't use on someone who's already pretty light. You're going to use this on your really dark, dark, dark levels for sure. It's more of a specialty toner, specialty lightener.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Because if they were a level 8, I wouldn't need to use 30 volume.
No, right? Not absolutely.
Exactly. So then I wouldn't use 10 in ice cream. I would just go ahead and use my light and conventional lightener. So I'm not reaching for ice cream all the time by any means. It's not always my go-to, but she was the perfect fit for it because of her depth and how much lighter we wanted to go.
It's perfect. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I just being with all the hair textures here in Southern California. It's like I don't know what to use on certain clients.
Yeah, and it's really about their hair history too, where they're starting, what they've had done will really dictate what you choose for lighteners as well.
Yeah, because COVID definitely, my clients put bauxite and
they went wild, right?
yes, they did.
So you're going to have to tune in for Amanda and I's class on color correction on June 21st.
Well, I know,
then.
and I meant to go to the Ask an Educator class last or 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I got my second COVID shot and fell asleep.
Yeah. Don't worry. Well, you know that you have resources for us. So if you ever have questions like that, you can always get in touch with us, even if it's not a class. No worries.
Yeah, and then on our June 6th and 7th class, we'll do a full roundup on all the lighteners and cover all the bases and really get a good understanding of when to use what. So don't worry, we have that coming up too. So that'll.
Yeah,
I already booked the clients with our classes with Laura.
Good. Yeah, that's going to be, Amanda's class is going to be awesome. It's going to be why you use it, when you use it, how you use it for all of our lightener portfolio, which will be awesome.
But yeah, I was scared to use ice cream because of the overlap.
Don't be scared. Just make sure it's the right choice for the right head. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'm going to share with you guys some of my top toners. These are my favorite things. I hope you can see them. I'm going to read them out loud because some of them are really small. So on the top one, the first image that you see, we've got, you guys actually already saw this swatch. This was a third of the formula 10.0, 2/3 10.21. So that's just adding a base to the 10.21 for that nice icy finish. The second one you see here is a 10.117 with 10.2. Really fun, just bringing a little bit of a violet into that already really nice kind of platinum gothic-y kind of blonde. The next one you'll see is 10.1 and 10.0. That's half and half. And then the swatch after that is half of the formula 10.0, half 10.2. So those are your most popular go-tos. The second image, you guys are going to see the T24. This I just did at a 1-to-1 ratio instead of 1-to-2. So you get a little bit more pigment in there. T135 is your mushroom toner. That's the one in the middle on that second image. Your third one is by far one of my favorites. That third one is also the third image, the close-up, so that you guys could see that close-up. That's actually going to be half of the formula 9.00. This is in satin, by the way. 9.00, half of the formula clear. So half 9.00, half clear. And then I have 10% of the formula 0.2. So violet. So that provides a really nice, beautiful, beautiful pearly light blonde using satin. Okay. And then the last image, you guys are going to see a control swatch first, and then you'll see the T21S. So you can see just how well and beautiful it tones that little bit of yellow right out and provides a beautiful white finish. Okay. If you guys need me to repeat any of these, just unmute yourself and shout it out so I can let you know. Good. Cool.
Did you leave all these on for 25 minutes?
Yeah, I do full processing time for all those. Actually, you know what? I lied to you. The first bundle is 15 minutes I did. The second bundle is 25 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, and the T21S, the very last image, was 15 minutes. Cool. All right, and so these are some total fun toners that I thought I'd toss your way just for fun. So this first image is the first two colors are actually just doing, utilizing the clear with the intensives like Amanda did on that image that you saw with that kind of amethyst color. So this first swatch is 2/3 of the formula clear. And then the 1/3 of the formula is 0.76. Okay, so that provides that really nice, beautiful, punchy kind of blue violet base. And then the middle image is 10.0 with half of the formula 0.3 for that really fun kind of dandelion yellow. And then the next image is a nice coral, which is quite popular right now. So I figured I'd add that in as well as one of, you know, a good option for you to keep things fun. That's a 9.026 with a quarter of the formula. What does that say? 6.66. Okay, 9026, 3/4 of the formula, 1/4 of the formula, 6.66, gives that pretty kind of corally light orange color. And then you'll see in the second swatches, you've got your metallic light violet from the metallics collection. You've got 10.2 straight. So like I had mentioned before, you can also overtone on purpose to be able to get those pretty lilac colors by not adding a base. You could do that as well. And then of course you'll see that 1022. So those are some really great violet based options as well. Okay, so that's what I've got for you guys today. We do have, people always ask about the swatches. I really suggest that you guys buy some of these swatches. You can get them right on Amazon. You'll see the information if you want to jot that down below. It's the Rinbool hair swatches for testing color. These come in so many different options. You can get rings that are just the palest blonde. You can get rings that are like a level 9, a level 8. This is a really great variety pack. I like this because I can work on cooling down my brunettes on a swatch like this. I can also work with neutralizing yellow or orange. And then of course I can do my nice clean blonde swatching on this. I have 100 of these all over my house. I'm kind of addicted, but basically anytime I'm doing a color and I think I want to add it to my swatch ring after I'm done with my client, if I have a little bit of color left, I just go ahead and swatch it out. And basically I've created a swatch book that's just my custom blends, which is really great. I don't ever show my clients the swatch book because I need to be able to recreate these examples all on my own. So I do this. So I have one that's just for blondes. I have one that's just for fashion permanent colors. I have one that's just semi-permanent fashion ones. I have one that's just brunette, ones that are just reds and coppers. And the tabs are plastic and I just use a fine tip Sharpie. On the back of it, I can write what level I started on. And on the front of it, I actually write the formula. So this is a huge conversation starter for me in the salon. I often just leave the swatches right on my station. It is me begging my client to pick it up and try to do something different, which is fun. So they tend to see that there's more options out there and we get to do more exciting stuff. But I find that I have learned so much about how to use my color line to its maximum efficiency by swatching things out. You can swatch things out, test it out, make sure that you're building that perfect blush blonde for your guest that comes in, try a bunch of different things out. And it just takes kind of the guessing game out of everything and it makes you understand your color much better. So I highly suggest these. It is work to do it. For sure. It has taken me a long time to build it, but just utilize every formula you're already using on your guests. And then when you've got a couple of minutes downtime, do something fun, do something that you're not sure maybe how it's going to come out, test it and do it that way. So they're really fun and I really encourage you guys to do that. So that's the info on that for you.